Good morning and welcome to the Little Apartment on the Prairie. I read an interesting article today. Whiskers, would you sit down? Sit down. Read an interesting article today and I just thought I'd talk about it a little bit. Was about how, more and more Americans currently are relying on food pantries, and I've talked about that before. But this article was talking about how that's creating a particular problem for people who have food allergies or some kind of dietary issues that they're limited in what they can eat. And it was really interesting. This one woman told a story about how she went into a food pantry and she has a young child who has multiple food allergies. And she asked them at the food pantry, if they had other food, did they have gluten-free bread, or did they have soy milk, or did they have, these different things that her child could eat. And they didn't, and she left the food pantry with a bunch of food, but the only items that her daughter could eat were potatoes and salsa. So there was lots of food for the rest of the family, but the kid, I guess, is eating potatoes and salsa for the month. Obviously that's not, the food pantry isn't necessarily meant to be your sole source of food. But when the only things that your kid can eat from the food pantry is potatoes and salsa, that's kind of a problem. And I've seen this at food pantries a lot. There was a food pantry in Ohio that I went to occasionally, and I kind of quit going there because they gave a lot of junk food. Maybe it was a good food pantry to go to if you had kids, but I would go and I'd get a loaf of bread, and I'd get some spaghetti and some spaghetti sauce or something, and then I would get a box of sugary cereal, like Lucky Charms with the marshmallows or something. I'd get some Pop-Tarts. I'd get some sugary granola bars. Sometimes I got candy. I'd get graham crackers. It would just be all this sugary stuff. And I thought, a lot of elderly people go to food pantries, and I'm thinking, you've got people with diabetes, or people with, not that elderly people have diabetes and younger people don't, but, I just thought it wasn't good food for a lot of people. And so it's definitely an issue with food pantries, and it's a bigger issue right now because of how they've been doing things since the pandemic, where most of the food pantries are doing where you drive up and you just get a box of food. Because it used to be you could go in and maybe they'd have a bunch of different loaves of bread and you got to pick a loaf of bread, or maybe they'd have a few different kinds of cereal and you got to pick a cereal. And if you had dietary issues, maybe there'd be something you could eat. Maybe they'd have some gluten-free bread along with the regular bread. Not always, but, sometimes they would, so you could at least pick something. But now you don't get to pick. You just get what you get, and you can't ask for something else. But even a lot of times if you would ask if they had something that was gluten-free, a lot of times they didn't in a lot of food pantries. And so that's a big issue. The article also talked about how a lot of the people that rely on food pantries also get food stamps, otherwise known as SNAP, which stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And part of the problem with that is that if you require, say you have celiac disease, or you're allergic to gluten, so you need gluten-free bread, that's way more expensive than the store brand regular bread. Gluten-free flour costs about 4 times as much as a bag of regular flour. Or if you're allergic to peanuts, so you need some other nut butter, or you need like soy butter, or sunflower butter, that costs 2 or 3 times as much as a generic jar of peanut butter. Or if you're allergic to dairy, or you're lactose intolerant and you can't have cow's milk. Whiskers, you are so hairy. And so you need like soy milk or almond milk. That costs about twice as much as regular milk. But you don't get extra food stamps if you have these dietary restrictions. And I actually think that's a problem with our food stamp program. I think that people that have medical dietary restrictions should be able to, get documentation from their physician and get more in food stamps, because it's going to cost more to buy a month's worth of food for someone who can't have gluten than it is to buy food for somebody that can eat anything. And in many cases, it's not just, if you have a kid that can't have gluten, it's not just that you need to buy gluten-free food for that kid, but you probably want to buy gluten-free food for the whole family, because for one thing, you don't want to have to cook 2 meals every night for dinner. But also, in some cases, people who have really severe allergies, cross-contamination is an issue. So, if you stir the regular spaghetti noodles with a spoon and then you stir the gluten-free spaghetti noodles, you're going to contaminate the gluten-free noodles, and it's just so easy to cross-contaminate food with gluten that if you're really sensitive to it, you don't want to have it in the house. And the same if people are severely allergic to dairy. I have a friend who is very allergic to dairy, and once she was in line in a restaurant and somebody dropped a milkshake and some of it splashed on her leg, and she had to use her EpiPen and go in the bathroom and wash her leg with soap and water, and because she's that allergic. You know how much kids spill their milk? If you have a kid that's that allergic to cow's milk, you're not going to want to have that cow's milk in your house. You're going to want to feed everybody in the house soy milk or almond milk or whatever. Because if you sit down to dinner and you give your other kids regular milk and the allergic kid the soy milk, what's the chances one of your kids is going to spill their cow's milk? Isn't that right, Whiskers? And then you would drink it, right? So it's a really interesting article, and if you donate food to your food pantry, think about getting something gluten-free, or donating shelf-stable soy milk, or donating a nut butter other than peanut butter. It's more expensive, and I know when I buy canned goods to donate, at the holidays when the grocery store has the big container where you can put in shelf-stable stuff you can buy at the store and donate right there. You think you want to buy the canned goods that are the store brand, that are cheapest, so you can buy the most, but while that's good too, sometimes, there are people who can't eat some of that stuff. So think about spending a little money for something that's gluten-free or free of other allergens. Also, if you rely on a food pantry, you might want to talk to them and find out what their policies are. Do they make an effort to have gluten-free food, or, food that's low in sugar, or food that's peanut-free, or things like that. I know a little while back my food pantry did a survey, and they asked people in the survey if they needed certain types of food or had any dietary restrictions. So far, I haven't seen them do anything with that information. I filled out my survey and turned it in, and I did write on there that I thought it was great that they were asking. But you might want to encourage your food pantry as nicely as possible to look into providing some food that would be suitable for people with dietary restrictions. I think I might also contact my Congress people and let them know that I would like them, to think about food stamps, and I'm not sure who you would even talk to about that, but really it seems like you ought to be able to get more in food stamps if you have special dietary needs, because if you get $200 a month in food stamps, for instance, it's going to go a lot further if you don't have dietary restrictions. If you have a lot of foods you can't eat, that $200 is not going to go very far, so it kind of seems unfair. I'll have to think about that more. You guys let me know what you think about that. If you have any idea who would you contact your senators, or who would you ask to look at changing the food stamp program? That seems like such a huge undertaking. I don't know. Let me know what you think, and let me know if your local food pantry offers any kind of special foods for people with dietary restrictions. I hope you're all having a good day, and I will talk to you soon.